So a couple of days ago, I went sailing single-handed for the first time, and I have to say it was pretty intense. By the end of it, I was pretty worn out, just worn out by the whole thing, even though I was only sailing for about 15 minutes. And that was partially because there was more wind than I thought. I thought I'd pick a nice quiet day to go sailing for the first time. But instead of the 10 knots that I was expecting, there was more like 15, and that meant the boat was really, really pulling, and I had to be constantly working to keep it under control. So by the end of it, I was pretty exhausted, but I did manage, and this is the first of two episodes to cover that particular event. So I'm going to do in this first episode, we'll talk about raising the sails, and in the second episode talk about lowering the sails. And those are the two moments that gave me the most concern. The actual sailing, I unfortunately didn't get any of that on tape because it was just so intense. I had no time to move cameras, position cameras, anything. I was just constantly working with both hands. So in the 10 or 15 minutes that I actually was sailing, I did a jibe, I did a couple of tacks. So I actually did all the sort of the routines of sailing. Unfortunately, none of that's on tape. So I'll have to do that another day. Go through how I do that, but for now, I'll talk about raising the sails and lowering the sails and how I did that. So to raise the sail, this is what I plan to do. So if the wind's coming from the front here, we've got the boat, and we'll be into the wind. So I'll move into the wind, I'll motor into the wind, so the sail, if it is up, will be flapping straight into the wind with the motor on. And the idea is that I will set the rudder in the middle, just let it loose. I've got a long keeled boat, so it should stay reasonably steady for a little while. I don't have an auto tiller. I don't have a wind vane, so I have to be reasonably quick. So my biggest fear here is that as I go to raise the sail, the boat starts to turn away from the wind. It'll stay because it's a long keel. It'll be reasonably stable for a little while, but I've got a limited time. So I will walk up to the mast. I will take a winch handle, and I will first raise the sail by pulling on the main halyard. Once the sail is up, it'll be flapping around. I will tighten it with the winch handle, and when that is done, I should loosen the topping lift. It's an old boat, it's got a topping lift, so I just loosen that, and the sail will take up the weight of the boom. And then I will quickly walk back to the cockpit and turn off the wind, and then start sailing off in this direction. So the theory is pretty straightforward. The problem here is a question of timing. Because I don't have an auto tiller. Usually this is done with an auto tiller. It makes it a lot easier. I have to do it in a reasonably quick time before the boat starts to really swing off and the boom comes out here. It could get messy. Of course, the main sheet should be loose anyway, so that the boom can move, but there will be a limit. If the boat really turns side onto the wind, then the boom is sort of as far out as it can be. Then I could start to have a real problem. It's got a bit of a leeway, but not that much. And I've got to do this quick enough that it can't do that. So before we get into the actual sailing and raising sails, maybe just quickly look at how I got out of the box this time. Things went a little bit better than the first time. The wind was from behind in this case. I released first the ropes at the front, the mooring lines at the front. And then what I did is I made the back lines, and you can see that here, I made the back lines just sort of loosely hanging on so that I could very quickly flick them off. So I've got the two back lines, both still on, but very, very easy to flick off. And when I was ready, I just could quickly, you can see me throwing them off here quite quickly. And then straight onto the motor, putting the motor into reverse. Had to give a little fend off here as well, but this went much better than last time. And basically it went pretty smoothly getting out this time. So I think I'm getting a little bit better at it each time. And into forward, to turn the boat around, and off we go. So you can see one thing that I had done before we left was to remove the sail cover. So the boat was ready to sail. I'd taken off even some of the straps on the sail, so there were fewer straps on the sail holding it on. You can see here I'm taking the time to adjust the headsail sheets. I wanted to have them a little bit forward because I was expecting not a hell of a lot of wind. I thought there wasn't going to be that much wind, so I thought I'd make the sails a bit more rounded. Now here's the actual raising of the mainsail. I've put the boat into the wind and I've walked forward, and now I'm about to start pulling on the halyard. The boat's still reasonably into the wind at this point, and I realised that at this point I've forgotten the winch handle. So there's my first mistake. So I do it all by hand, pull the sail all the way up by hand. You can see the boat's starting to turn around here. It's not quite into the wind anymore. Here I'm trying to put a bit more strain on the sail, but I never got it really tight because I didn't have the winch handle with me. The luff was still reasonably loose, unfortunately. In this case it wasn't that serious because I wasn't doing that much sailing, but yeah, if you wanted better sail trim, then I should have tightened it with a winch handle. I also forgot to loosen the topping lift, so a few mistakes there made, but sail was raised and I was actually able to sail along. At that time I realised there was quite a bit more wind than I thought, because we were sailing along at about 3.5 knots just with the mainsail. In terms of raising the headsail, it's a small Genoa. It's quite a lot easier than the mainsail, I would say. So the way I intend to do it is, once I'm sailing with the mainsail on any point of sail, really. So here's the boat. Say it's beating into the wind or near the winds, but it shouldn't matter. So we've got the sail, the mainsail here, and the idea is just I can do this bit completely from the cockpit because I have recently allowed a roller furling to be installed. Before that, it had no roll furling. It's, as I said already, it's a pretty old boat, and it used to have a hank-on headsail. And to be quite honest, if I don't think I would have dared sail on my own if I had to do the hank-on headsail completely on my own, because it's so much more work to get that that working. I just, in particular, lowering the sail, I just can't imagine going onto the foredeck and trying to pull in that sail with the halyard, controlling the halyard at the same time as I was pulling in the sail, and doing that fast enough that the boat doesn't end up somewhere, off course, basically, without an auto tiller. If I had an auto tiller, maybe it'd be different. But in any case, I do have a roller furling. It's got a furling line, comes back to me in the cockpit. And what that means is, to roll this out, it's pretty straightforward. I just take the sheet, which also comes back here. I pull on the sheet as I release the furling line. So pulling on the sheet, which maybe goes around the winch. So pull on this as I release the furling line. And that slowly rolls out the headsail. So it's pretty straightforward. There's no real rush here, because I can be standing in the cockpit, say with a tiller between my legs, and just control it that way. There's no real rush. I can do it reasonably comfortably. It's just a question of having to control the two lines with one hand each, and then using my knees to control the tiller. But this is considerably easier than the mainsail. Unfortunately, I didn't get any actual footage of me rolling the headsail out. You can see it here flying once it's already up. But it's not that exciting to watch anyway. You can see here I'm sailing along with the headsail and the mainsail. So that's it for now. Next episode we'll deal with actually getting those sails back down again.